Welcome to this episode of John's Journal. We're still going through the beginning of the Journal of Nicholas Cresswell and relating it to some of the other journals. Today I was out this morning and working on getting around in the woods, dealing with some logs and turning it into lumber for another project. And I always come back and think about some of these journals when I'm doing that. That's kind of my personal, job for today. And if you're reading in Matthew Patton's diary, he does a lot of that. He's somebody who's working with wood and getting things ready. And right now it's end of summer, beginning of fall, and the pressure starts to loom on you, getting ready for winter. What projects do I have to get done right now? What do I have to put off? That's something I can put off. What do I have to get done? So, Nicholas Cresswell, we just got done with him kind of coming back, his dealing with his losses and his philosophical, how do I deal with the losses that I've had? Here he is, and I'm going to actually skipping back a couple of days from where I ended last week, but that's all right. Wednesday, October 19th, 1774. This morning, settled with the doctor, and this is the doctor who poisoned him. Settled with the doctor who has charged, I believe, who has charged me 14 guineas and has the impudence to tell me it is very cheap. I was obliged to comply with it and gave him an order on Mr. Kirk, got horses and a boy from him, Mr. Kirk or from the doctor, dined at Piscataway, arrived at Alexandria in the evening. Mr. Kirk condoles me on my misfortunes, but seems very glad to see me in good health. He tells me that he never expected to see me again, and had deferred riding home until the vessel arrived, supposing it would bring news of my death. So, hadn't been thinking well of his health there. But the sea air set him up properly, right? Now that was October 19th. Now we skip ahead to November 24th. And he's just sort of been banging around here, trying to figure out what he's going to do. He's drawing bills on his father. He's doing this and that. Wrote to my father, but dare not inform him of my intentions of staying here. Low-spirited. He just can't figure out what he's going to do next. Thursday, November 24th, waiting in expectation of getting a wheat commission, but am disappointed. Great quantities of this article are brought down from the back country in wagons to this place, as good a wheat as I ever saw in England, and sell for 2 shillings 9 pence to 4 shillings 6 pence sterling per bushel. It is sent to the eastern markets. Great quantities of flour are likewise brought from here, but this is generally sent to the West Indies and sometimes to Lisbon and up the straits. I am doing nothing here. I am determined to take a tour immediately. So he wants to get out there and start looking at different places. And here he is. I thought this isn't necessarily related to anything particular in this, but I thought it was something. People ask about this a lot. December 25th. Christmas Day, 1774. Christmas Day, but little regarded here. This is in Virginia. If there are places in the colonies that are a bit more probably culturally connected with holidays and Christmas, this would be one of them, and it's not very celebrated. But here we have January 6th, January 7th. It gets a little more festive, which is typical of that time period. And this is the end of this sort of, there's a party here that he's going to, a ball. He says, this is sociable, but I think it looks more like a bacchanalian dance than one in a polite assembly. Old women, young wives with young children in the lap, widows, maids, and girls come promiscuously to these assemblies, which generally continue till morning. A cold supper, punch, wines, coffee, coffee and chocolate, but no tea. This is a forbidden herb. The men chiefly Scotch and Irish. I think he means the men are chiefly drinking Scotch whiskey and Irish whiskey, but maybe he means their nationality. Okay. Maybe he does mean that. I read it one way, and now I'm thinking about it, reading it, and maybe I'm reading it. It's like, I went home about 2 o'clock, but parts of the company stayed, got drunk, and had a fight. Maybe he means Scots-Irish. That's where he's going with this, because they're known for being a little rowdy in settings like this, just for the fun of it. Spent this evening with Mr. Kirk, Captain Budcombe, Captain Rowe, and Captain Scott at the tavern very merrily. The next day, Tuesday, January 10th, 1775. These 3 days I have spent in making inquiries about the nature and situation of the land in the Illinois country, and have fortunately met with two gentlemen who resided there some time. The lands are exceedingly rich, produce tobacco, indigo, and wheat, situated at the conjunction of the Ohio with Mississippi River, about 1,000 miles from New Orleans and 2,000 miles from this place. It likewise abounds with lead and mines of copper, but very few inhabitants, and those French. I am told by these gentlemen that there will be some risk in going down the Ohio. The Indians often cut the white people off in their passage down to the Mississippi. I think I have a prospect of making it worthwhile, and will hazard the passage. I have agreed to go if Messrs. Kirk and Seidelbottom will use their interest to procure me a surveyor's warrant. This they have promised to do, and will write to Philadelphia to the gentlemen who are concerned in the purchase on my behalf. Some of the principal people are in England. If I can by any means make friends sufficient to get their interest, the place of surveyor will be worth some hundreds a year, exclusive of the opportunities a surveyor has of taking up lands for himself. If that fails, 5,000 acres of land will amply pay me for my trouble of going there. I can do nothing here till times are settled, and am in hopes that I can get back before September next, and go home in the fall. By that time I expect this affair will be settled upon a permanent footing. In short, I have no other prospects of making up my losses, but this, and I cannot bear the thought of returning home a beggar. So, he's talking about this this affair. He means the Revolutionary War. He's hoping that it'll get settled, and he can deal with that. He says here that 5,000 acres of land will amply pay me. He's been offered part of a large land grant that other people have sort of settled. So I think it's Mr. Kirk, maybe it's some of his friends there. They've wrangled themselves a what would you call it? A very, very highly speculative land purchase of probably 20,000 acres or 40,000 acres in Nowhereville. So it would be sort of like selling land on the moon right now. I've got 10,000 acres on the moon. If you go there and check it out, I'll give you 500 of it, as payment. So they're saying they'll give him 5,000 acres of land if he just goes and sort of surveys, not even really, and when they say survey, they don't even really mean, get stakes out. More like, randomly, okay, our land starts at the crook in the river here and goes, 30 miles this way, and, it's very, very, very haphazard. For the time period, though, it's just so unknown and speculative that they just They just don't know what, they don't even know what there is out there. So they're hoping he'll go out there, stake their claim, basically put down spots and say, this is what we own. And yeah, you, Nicholas Cresswell, can take a particular portion of that. And he even doesn't expect to do anything with it, but sell it on to yet another person. And that's what they are doing. Even Kirk and the other gentleman who owns this giant parcel of land, they don't expect to do anything with it. Just sell it on to the next sucker, basically. It reminds me a bit of Nicholas Cresswell and his kind of jumping out and, you know, going out there and looking at this. We find examples of that in some of the other journals. We've got the Bark-Covered House, good example of that. William Nolan's father going out to Michigan and looking for a parcel of land. He leaves his family behind, but he knows there's no place to grow in his area in New York. There's, you know, no place for him to stretch out because everything's bought up. And so he goes out, finds a piece of property, buys it, goes back to New York, gets his family, and they go and break the wilderness. You know, how are we going to find a spot? He's bought, 100, 200 acres of land in the middle of giant trees. How am I going to make a living as a farmer doing that? But William Nolan's family, they do exactly that. So if you haven't seen or listened to any of those, I've been reading through the Bark-Covered House. You can find that here on Townsends Plus. Thank you so much for being part of Townsends Plus, being part of what we do on the channel, helping make all that we do happen as we study what it was like 150 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, and how that relates to us today. It's important, and we live in very, very fractious times. They did too. Nicholas Cresswell is dealing with very, very fractious times. And we can see that great turmoil comes at certain particular points, and then what happens after that. How do we get through the turmoil, and how do we continue to survive and prosper in times after that turmoil? So very, very important stuff. Thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching.